like to call this April 10th, 2025 Board of Education work session to order. George, can you take the roll?
Yep. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Here.
Ms. Stalchek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum.
Yeah, here.
We're all
We all
present.
stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda, we will be entering into executive session to,
Consider the employment of a public employee.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. George, you want to take the roll?
Ms. Stalchek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Motion passes. We should resume public session around 7 PM. All right, we will resume public session at 7:07 PM. Next on our agenda is our strategic priorities. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. There are 4 strategic priorities to the plan: transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. Our strategic priorities give actionable focus to our district's purpose and mission and guide the work of our strategic plan. Item D on the agenda is an agenda change. The following change was made to the agenda under Section J, Superintendent's Report, Business Service. Adjustment to Item 3, roof replacement at Whitney and Chapman Elementary Schools. The fund being used was changed from the 003 Permanent Improvement Funds to the 070 Capital Projects Fund. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Ryla for student achievement.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. Obviously, we have a packed house here. It's an awesome evening to celebrate so many of our talented students, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kilbane and Ms. Stovchek to just get us going with the OSBA Student Achievement Award.
We have nobody tonight.
Oh, no?
We went to Sarar, and Sarar will be here.
Next time?
The next time.
All right.
We
Well-
were delayed in our
Yeah.
thing, so.
Well, we look forward to that next meeting. And so with that, I'm going to ask our athletic director, Denny Ziegler, to come up to get us going with our athletic recognitions for tonight.
Thank you very much. As I stated previously, winter sports season was a heck of a season for us. A lot of state qualifiers, a lot of state placers, a lot of school records being broken. So our first one that I want to bring up is Coach Tim Orlowski to talk about our girls wrestling program. It has truly been amazing to see from where it started about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, with maybe 1 or 2 girls, to now we have almost a full lineup, and our first ever not only state qualifier, but our first ever state placer for girls wrestling. So, Coach Tim.
Good evening. Well, first of all, if I could bring Stella up real quick. And as she knows, I get kind of emotional on this stuff, so I'll try and keep it under control. Stella came last year, was her first year. Her dad, who also helps coach, which is Jason Januszewski, and then Tyler Maxwell. Nothing without them would be possible for this program. I appreciate everything they do for us. Stella last year, as a newbie, I would say, went 20-13 as her first time ever wrestling. The work ethic she has in the room is fantastic. She's always there, always pushing her teammates and pushing herself. This year, 44-11 was her final record. Beating, I think it was 3 girls that were actually ranked higher than her to make the podium, which was a tremendous feat. I can't wait to see what she has in store the next 2 years. She's setting records already, and she's going to break her own records, I have a feeling, going forward. She will be the face of the program going forward. Congratulations, Stella.
too, Tim.
Got to shake hands. Congratulations. 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 Thank you.
And I think for the next award, we've got a special recognition, something we haven't done in a while, but I'm going to bring up Nick Stavanovich to come up and recognize our next honoree.
All right, so we really appreciate you guys having us here, obviously representing the youth end of the program. Personally, for me, it's really great just seeing who's here. I mean, I have 4 kids in the district, so I know the wrestlers, the gymnasts, a whole bunch of the people here very, very well, so this is really great. I was going to have Coach Coe speak, but in this sport where you're usually coach and dad and everything, sometimes it's nice to take a little bit of a break. So we're here to recognize Vinny, give you guys just a little bit of a background here. Ohio, especially Northeast Ohio, is about ground zero for boys wrestling. It's consistently one of the top 3, 4, 5 states in the country for probably 70 years now. But we go out of our way to really travel around the country when we can. And there's a tournament in Tulsa every year that has probably 1,600 wrestlers from about 46 to 48 states every year. So we were fortunate enough to take 8 kids this year. It's the first time we've had everybody make it to day 2, but Vinny was the shining achievement of the day. He was our first placer ever, taking somebody to the tournament, and was our first champion ever. So he showed up, 7 years old, first grade, and beat up on kids from all over the country when people like his brother and my son and everybody else was just watching this happen, and it was really, really exciting. So we're really, really proud of him. And just by a little bit more background here, as if you couldn't tell, he's not the smallest dude around for being 7 years old. So Vinny really just as an exemplar of the program works out with kids bigger than him, older than him. I mean, I thought I was hard on guys. His dad's in the room, and never complains, is really just a great example for the program. So on behalf of just the Youth Strongsville program, we want to recognize Vinny, but we really appreciate you guys taking a moment for that as well. So thank you.
Great job. Thank you. Vinny, I heard last year your goal was to be a state champion, and this year your goal was to be a national champion, so you've accomplished those goals. I can't wait to see what your next goal is you set for yourself.
That's awesome. Next, we are going to turn it over to swimming and diving.
All right, thank you once again. If I could call up Coach Tom Stacy to recognize our swimmers and our divers. Again, it goes without saying that some of the students that are going to be recognized have done this multiple years, and I'll let Coach Tom touch on that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is my 18th year at Strongsville coaching. I'm always very appreciative of all the support in the community. I'm going to bring all 3 of them up, and then just speak a little bit with them up here. First, she's a 3-time state qualifier, a senior, Estelle Friedrich. Come on up, Estelle. Another 3-time state qualifier, also a senior, Owen Weiss. And then first-time state qualifier, junior, Mila Rose. So they all had very excellent seasons. For Owen and Estelle, excellent careers. A 3-year state qualifier it hasn't been done in our program very often, doesn't happen very often, so it's phenomenal. Mila as far as her life goes, is a pretty new diver as far as like the whole thing goes, and it's so hard to dive. I've tried diving. It's so difficult as far as it's technical, but then like thinking about slamming your head on the board or smacking or something is so difficult. And she has improved so much since her freshman year. It's truly phenomenal, and I'm so excited for what she's going to do her senior year. These three, so I'm very appreciative to this community, everything that goes on here, the school district, the rec center, the city, everything. These three actually all started at the girls 5 and 0 and 6 swimming in Strongsville in the summer league here, which is truly phenomenal. It's something the community comes together and you have like housing developments going against each other, and it's really phenomenal. But they all have that deep background, and I'm sure all grateful to this community for having had that to get started, because who knows if this is the path that they would have been on, and they would have been able to have that excellence. So I'm very appreciative of the community. I'm very appreciative to all of them for working so hard and for achieving so much in swimming and diving. That's all I have. Thank you so much, everybody, again, for this recognition for these athletes.
Nice to be here. Good job. Congratulations. Great stuff. Great job. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I love their jackets. See how they're cool.
And finally, rounding off our recognition, I'm going to bring Denny back up to share the accomplishments of our gymnastics team.
Thank you very much. So I will bring up new head coach Owen and assistant Katie, if you guys want to come up. It is truly remarkable that when a lot of new coaches come into a program, it's always tough. There's a big learning curve. And I'd say 90% of the time, a program takes a step backwards before they take a step forward. In this case, I think we took almost 5 steps forward from where we were to where this program was. At one point during the year, they had the top team average in the state, higher than even Brecksville, who is a 21 or 22 time state champ. It seemed like every week they were, breaking a new record, whether it be a team record, a vault record, a floor record, an all-around record, something like that. And I always sat there thinking, what's next? And after finishing in a disappointing second at the district meet, not by much, they were able to rebound and finish 3rd in the state. And I'll let Owen and Katie talk more about it.
Thank you. Gymnastics is a sport that demands resilience. It's falling 7 times and getting up 8, pushing through all the mental and physical setbacks and never giving up. And this year, this team did just that. This group of young women gave everything they had to this team, setting new standards along the way. One of the youngest teams in the state, we had 11 new additions to the team this year, as well as brand new leadership and coaching staff. We all learned together what it takes to be the best. This year, these girls set the new Strongsville program record twice, beating all other results in the school's history, and then improving on their own record at districts the following week. This team went on to finish 3rd in the state, Strongsville's best finish in over a decade. Every day, these girls stepped into the gym and challenged themselves, learning and competing new skills they've never done in their entire career. This team pushed each other to get better every day, motivated each other, and persevered through it all. We ended the regular season seated 2nd behind the 22-time defending state champions, Brecksville, the best regular season finish in school history. They set a new program record on February 8th at the Win the Day Invitational in Cincinnati, scoring a 143.725, beating the previous record set last year. They then went on to top that record by over 1.5 points, scoring a 145.375 at districts a few weeks later, finishing 3rd in the entire state. The following week, they competed at states, earning a 3rd place finish, the best in over a decade. Now, I would like to invite Shaler up here. Leading our scoring total, junior Shayler Smith earned herself the MVP award for the most counting scores and points added to our team this past season. In her first competitive high school season, Shayler added herself to the record books in the all-around, achieving the third and fourth highest scores in Strongsville history. She qualified as an individual to state championships in the all-around, vault, beam, and floor, and was an alternate for bars. She also achieved a top 10 finish at states, earning herself all-state honors. Shayler was also the GCC Gymnast of the Year, winning the all-around and vault at GCC championships and medaling on every event. Now if I could ask Gianna to come up here. This year's Gymnast of the Year award was awarded to the other top contributor, Gianna Upchurch. In her senior year, Gianna qualified to states for all-around, making her a state representative all 4 years of her high school career, the first and only one in school history. Gianna was the GCC bar champion this year, also receiving all GCC team honors for her 4th year in a row. And if I could have Lauren, Abby, Michaela, Sienna, and Emma. Rounding out our individual results, we had 2 event specialists at individual states this year, Lauren Pisani on bars and beam, and Abby Burek on bars. Lauren finished in the top 10 on both events, receiving all state honors. She was also all GCC team on the vault and placed on floor and beam as well. Abby contributed on bars in 10 out of 11 meets and earned herself a spot to states with a 5th place finish at districts. Senior Sarah Waugh also received all GCC honors on the vault and set new career highs on all 4 events this season. She was also this year's most improved. Sophomore Michaela Nort won the Leadership Award, demonstrating an outstanding work ethic and commitment to the team. Freshman Sienna Cancelo won the Model Mustang Award for her dedication and positivity, and Emma Jurcic won our Newcomer of the Year Award for the most points contributed by a freshman this season. These individuals led the way for the incredible season this team had, but we couldn't have done it without each and every one of these girls. Every single athlete on this team had a contributing score this year and made multiple lineups contributing to this team's success. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the support we received along the way. So thank you to the district, the athletic department, and boosters who believed in this team's potential and took a chance on the new young coaches. And to the parents who made every moment special for the athletes and made this season so special and enjoyable for all of us. And to our seniors, Gianna and Sarah, thank you for your leadership and for setting an example of what hard work looks like. Your dedication and guidance does not go unnoticed. We wouldn't be where we are today without the 2 of them. And finally, thank you to my co-coach, Katie. This team would not be the same without her. Her influence and positivity have impacted all of us and will continue to for years to come. I'm so grateful to have her by my side and share these experiences with her. And I would like to think her and I are the second best team here. And to the best team, congratulations on an incredible season, girls. This year will not just be remembered for the success, but for the memories, fun, and unforgettable experiences we had along the way. We are so proud of each and every one of you, and we can't wait to see what the future holds for this program. I'm going to call them up to get their recognition. Let's start with Emma. Lucy Habel. Brooke Eckert. Sienna Cancella. Madeline Caldwell. Abby Burek. Rachel Barton. Megan Whitaker. Gianna Upchurch. Shayler Smith.
Just amazing. Congratulations.
Lauren Pisani.
Are you going to be okay there?
Congratulations.
Michaela Nort.
Congratulations.
Great work. Great work. I'm proud.
Kelsey Mooney. Sam Mauger.
Great season. Hope you're having fun.
Olga Mashevska. Lena Lay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Violet Keith.
Go.
Congratulations.
And Sarah Waugh was unable to be here tonight.
Congratulations.
So much. You guys did amazing. So glad we hired you. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Good job. Wait to see what you guys do next year.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And not one person did a cartwheel?
All right, well, congratulations to everyone here. It's so great to see this room so full of kids and your parents. We're proud of you, and you are one of the reasons why our district is a premier district. So from Vinny all the way up to our seniors, congratulations to all of you. Thank you. And now is a great time if anyone has homework or needs to, be somewhere. Thanks.
Nowhere in particular, nowhere at all.
Time to go.
No one cares about the preschool parking lot replacement?
Or Chapman's new,
Man,
roundabout. I mean, really.
Not even one pity person this time?
No, not one. Not one.
I mean, alrighty then. Okay. All right, next on our agenda is public comment. I have no slips and we have no audience left.
Not even
So
one.
we're just gonna keep right on moving along. Next is approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of the March 27th, 2025 regular meeting. All audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes and are available upon request through the treasurer's office. Video recordings shall be maintained based on the availability of the selected digital online platform. Next, I am going to turn it over to Mr. Aganastu for an update on our state funding.
Thank you, Mrs. Hausum. Although I have nothing for the treasurer's report, I did want to give an update on where we are in the process with the state funding as the House approved their version of the state budget today, and now it's moving on to the Senate. So if you recall, the way the process works, the governor introduces his budget in February, then it moves to the House, and the House introduced their budget. Earlier this week, there was a substitute bill which was approved today, and now it's going to the Senate, which they're going to probably have their version come out, which is modifications off that. And then at some point, they'll have a conference committee to come back with the House to kind of put it all together, and then later, towards the end of June, the governor will approve it. But based on the House version of the budget that was approved today, for the state, there's three components I want to focus on. First is the state funding. An additional $226 million was added to public education from the governor's budget, and the simulations are showing that Strongsville is showing an increase from fiscal year 25 to 26 of $104,000 and $62,146 in fiscal year 27. However, we'll be receiving less, although it's an increase, we'll be receiving less than what was forecasted in November due to the formula not being fully funded. So although it was an increase from this year to next year, if the formula is fully funded, we would have received additional funds. I'll get to those figures here in a second. This substitute bill replaces the Fair Funding Plan, which is what we're currently funded on, with a different formula referred to by Chair Stewart as a bridge formula. While the Fair School Funding Plan technically remains in law, the substitute bill prohibits the Department of Education and Workforce from making payments under the fiscal year 26 and 27. Instead, the Department of Education and Workforce must pay each traditional district an amount of a temporary foundation funding. So as I stated, in comparison to, although it's an increase in comparison to the forecast, we'll be in fiscal year 26 next year, we'll be receiving about $182,000 less if it was fully funded, and then in fiscal year 27 about $460,000 less than what was forecasted. In comparison to the governor's budget, it is slightly better, as under the governor's budget, we would have shown a decrease of 315,000 if the formula was fully funded in year one, and 632. So a little bit of gain in comparison to the governor's budget, but all in all, a net loss overall based on the funding formula not being funded. Another item that was in the budget bill was they put a cash balance policy in place. And what that is it would require school districts to submit projections of revenues and expenditures to the county budget commission, which we already do when we approve our tax budget at the beginning of the year. But the next step would be budget commissions are then required to reduce property tax rates for any districts whose cash balance exceeds, when it was first introduced, it was 25%. As approved today, it changed to 30% of their expenditures in the previous year. So what they're saying is only to have cash carryovers of 30%, which equates to about 105 days. The 25% was 90 days. So if we have anything over that, then the budget commissions, the county, is required to decrease tax rates, not assess taxes, to get you to that 25%. And it would be a year-by-year situation. And then what was approved today in the updated version was also they would create a special timeline for fiscal year 25 to take effect for fiscal year, or for tax year 25, which would begin in January. So typically, we already approved and submitted our tax budget for tax year 25 in January. So they want to put a special timeline, so this process happens this calendar year again, so that any reductions would be in place beginning January 1st. And then also what was in this version that was approved today was reducing the 5-year forecast from, instead of 5 years, to a 3-year forecast. And then the last piece, they put a provision for administrator salaries, prohibits any school district of Board of Education from spending more than 15% of its annual operating budget on administrative salaries, benefits, and related administrative office costs. Looking at last year's expenditures, we're slightly under that, but that was another provision that went in there and is moving forward to the House. So that was the updates I wanted to give today based on the budget bill. Continue to monitor. I'm sure the Senate's going to have their version, which will probably come out, I'm assuming by the end of this month, maybe early next month.
George, if something like this goes through as is, and we, like let's say the administrator 15%, how long do we have to comply?
So they haven't put that out yet.
Okay, so that they would specify?
They would specify.
Okay.
Yep. Usually what happens with these budget bills is they're introduced, they're voted on they're in place June 30th, and then there's a period where the appropriate departments of the state put in the policies to make it happen, and then usually it was by October, the law goes into effect, and there's more direction at that time.
Unless they put a different clause on it, it's 90 days after the governor signs it. So that's usually why it's the October.
Yeah. Thanks, Cameron.
So I was just going to share a couple of thoughts as Michelle and I are on the legislative liaison. This will be front of mind in the news from now until the governor signs the biennium budget. It does feel like we are taking a step back from the strategy of the fair funding formula. I think those of us who pay as close attention as we do, every word counts and we pay attention to every word. But a lot of it for me is just saber rattling and working on agendas. You know, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about what the state will fund our education for and how it affects Strongsville. On the one hand, you'll hear people say they're cutting our funds. And there's some truth to that based on what we were expecting to receive, what we were financially planning in our 5-year forecast to receive. It is a cut in our funding. It's a cut in what was predicted to be funded. You'll then have other people arguing it's an increase in funding. And based on what we received last year, it is a increase in that amount. So everybody is going to stand on their soapboxes and argue or discuss the situation the way they want. I do think that from my perspective as a board member, what I'm always mindful of is the idea that taxpayers in Strongsville pay income tax. And the last numbers I was able to get on the state of Ohio's website, Strongsville sends to Columbus $55 million in 2022. George, how much did we get last year?
9 million.
9 million. One more time, George.
9 million.
9 million. The Strongsville taxpayer sends $55 million in 2022. It has only gotten higher since 2022. So when you hear people talk about fair, right, wrong, or what have you, from my perspective, if we're sending $55 million in income tax, I'm justified in advocating that we get as much money as we can for education for our school district from the state. You can have, on the one hand, Bride Rose Sweeney says, while districts worry about how much funding is coming in, they could also have to consider how much is sitting in their balance sheet. And this is in regards to that 25 or 30% clause. The budget would direct county officials to pare back the property taxes, which supports schools. And then you have David Thomas, who is, I guess, the architect of this 25 or 30%. He's criticizing these carryovers and saying they're a poor return on taxpayers' investment, right? And all of it sounds good, right? In Strongsville, we had that conversation or that argument about our own levies. You have too much money in the bank. You don't need more money. And that argument in the ballot box won the day. Every dollar that we don't get from the state has a consequence for our local taxpayers. So the next 3 months, there's going to be a lot of back and forth. What I would ask every taxpayer in the city of Strongsville to do is to contact Tom Patton, because that's where it is currently, and he's our state senator. And the volleyball game is currently in the Senate's hands, and request and remind Tom that at the end of the day, Strongsville sends more income tax to Columbus than we receive back. So the idea of any kind of cut isn't fair on that basis. So advocate that they should fully fund the formula. If they're not going to fully fund the formula, fund it however they want, but make sure that Strongsville gets its share. And then, you know, the last pithy comment I will make is the state legislature is calling this a bridge formula. I would like to know where we're headed on this bridge. Our meeting today, we're going to talk about a lot of financial issues. We're going to talk about our bond, et cetera. They're all in the same issue. On the one hand, nobody wants to pay taxes. On the other hand, everybody wants the best darn education we can provide our students. And so that's what we're talking about, and welcome to politics.
Any other comments, questions for George? All right, thank you, George. I'm sure you're going to be bringing back lots of
Keep you
updates on
updated
this.
as we receive them.
Thank you. All right, next, Dr. Iba.
Thank you. So Steve's going to come up. We're going to partner on the start of this discussion. So as you know, a month or so ago, we talked to you about the concerns with transportation. That for the first time this year, we've been struggling to keep up with the service requirements that we have with a 1 mile limit. Especially at the elementary level, we've had more and more buses that are arriving late in the afternoon, arriving late at home. We've had to tell on a couple occasions some other of our school partners that, hey, we don't have the bus to provide services to your school today. With 4 impending retirements, a bus driver, staff that the majority is over 65 years of age, when that takes in account illnesses, FMLAs that happen more frequently as you get older, we propose that we need to take a look at doing something differently because the problem is only going to increase in challenges. So Steve shared a variety of things that we've tried to do to mitigate this before looking at doing a change. Steve and his team have looked at the overall routes, and we've reduced routes as much as we can with a 1-mile limit. We've consolidated and split routes throughout the school year. We've timed routes of where we have to provide transportation to parochial and other schools to see whether or not they fall outside of the limit where we should transport. We've taken a look at efficiency of some of our parochial partners to see if it's transportation in lieu of instead of providing services. We had an outside expert come in and audit our transportation services to look at whether we can do anything differently. And after all that, we are as lean as we possibly can be to provide the services that we are directed to do by board policy at this time. So the other part is, well, how do we incentivize more drivers to come and either be substitutes? That's really what we need right now is substitutes and then retirements, replacements. And so we've had the bus on Pearl Road. We've provided incentives for people to come here. As we've done wage analysis, we pay better than most of the surrounding districts already in terms of that. And still that hasn't worked. And what that means is our transportation supervisors, both of them, are driving on a daily basis to make it work. Our office staff members are driving on a daily basis to make it work. And our bus drivers are not only doing the routes they were contracted to do, but they drop those kids off and go back and do another route to make it all work. So what we are looking for today is guidance and consensus from the board that will go to the policy committee, and the policy is where the decision will become official. Because our current board policy says that we will transport all students that live a mile or more from the school district. Now, our policy says on non-busing streets, but the non-busing streets are a mile or more. That's what we use. And so we've provided a couple of options for you to consider, as Steve went through last time. But before we get into the data, the board posed a few questions for us last time that you wanted us to research. So we wanted to close that loop. And one of those were to talk to our drivers and our transportation department to get their opinion on some of the options we shared, which were stay where we're at, go to 1.25 miles, or go to 1.5. So Steve had that meeting, and Steve, if you want to give an overview of the feedback we got from the drivers and transportation department.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So the feedback that I received from them was that they agreed with my assessment, obviously, that we need to change some things because we have, for all the reasons that Dr. Ravi just stated, we need to do something because they're driving more than they're even contracted to, and they're getting burnt out. Some of their ideas, we had already covered. Some of the ideas one of the ideas that came to me was if we ever do look at eliminating a high school level, would we ever consider doing 2 tiers for elementaries? That's something for us to look at. There would have to be a lot of advertising about that because you'd have one elementary starting theoretically like an hour before the others. I don't know how to make that work. I can research that more, but that's one of the ideas that came out. It was basically splitting elementary into 2 tiers to try and recoup some of that time back. But that would just have some logistical issues that we would have to work through if we started some buildings later than others. So other than those, I know another concern that came up was the amount of home stops that we're doing for students that are either not in special needs, or it's not a matter of safety, but sometimes it's more a matter of convenience, and that's something that, as we go through the data, I have recommendations on as well. That's been noticed, and then just the concerns if we start to move the radius. Are we going to stop picking up students that are on non-sidewalk streets, and that safety concern? My recommendation would be no, we would continue to pick up those students because it's a safety concern. We're not trying to punish or put students in a hazardous situation. We just need to look at the level of resources that we're providing when safety is not an issue and make some decisions moving forward. So that was the feedback that I received from them.
The other part, Steve, was a question about if we change our mileage limit, we would add more drivers. And are our parking lots able to sustain that increase in car traffic? So, you know, we've talked about, hey, we feel like the preschool Muraski, Whitney, and the high school will be good. The principals can confirm that. Kids are in the middle school, not that there's not challenges, but there's limited options to enhance it based on the structure of it. But Chapman and Sarar were where we identified some issues. So if you can give some updates on what you believe are options to address those issues.
Sure. So at Sarar, one of the idea that came to with Keith Simek, the maintenance foreman, that I would encourage us to explore is to take so if you're going into Sarar on the left-hand side, you have the playground/parking lot. We could replicate that playground in the back of the building behind the current playground. Because there would be no cars on there, we could do all of that work in-house. All the removing of the topsoil, putting down a base, putting down asphalt, putting in some basketball hoops. That way we would completely eliminate the students being in the front of the building at all times for recess. We can move them to the back. At that point, that whole side lot would become teacher parking and staff parking. And then we can modify the middle so that there are multiple circles in there with parent and bus lanes so that the traffic isn't stopped. The issue that I've observed and came to is when you have continuous circles that are going the same way, for example, like Whitney, the traffic doesn't seem to be an issue. There's a little bit of a delay, but we're always going to the same exit, so there is going to be a little bit of a delay. It's when the proverbial, thank you Ghostbusters, when the streams cross, that's when you have some of the issues going on. So that would be a proposed solution over at Sarar if you know, to explore the cost of putting that in. Over at Chapman, there are a couple of different options. The one that we could do is, because there is such a nice frontage to that building, we could actually cut into that and put a circle there. That could be a bus drop-off. And then the parents go on the larger circle. Again, the circles are going the same way, so there wouldn't be any real crossing until they came to, you know, the edge, so it's only crossing once instead of multiple times. Also at Sarar, the issue is people have to park, and then reverse is sometimes a mystery gear, and there's a lot of close calls. Everybody's respectful, everybody, you know, is cautious, but trying to eliminate any circumstance where people are parking and then backing up is going to help the traffic flow. Another option over there may be the same theme as at Sarar, is to move the playground, which is less of a playground now with the addition of the trailers, replicate that up above the basketball hoops, and then utilize some of that space in the back there for additional parking to alleviate some of the parking issues that are in the front. You know, it could be either or a combination of those two. But we've had those discussions to see how to get traffic through those areas faster and, you know, avoid some of the stopping that's happening at both Sarar and at Chapman.
So before we move on from that question, any other follow-ups on parking lots and increased traffic?
I don't have, there's a lot more space to work with at Chapman, so I can see there's more but Sarar is so close to the street, so I'm trying to picture, if you're going to have parents go in a car loop, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Will we not back the entire traffic on Preem up in that, while parents are waiting in that car loop?
If you move all of the teachers over, you could utilize that side lot as part of a loop.
But like,
So
so
you're
would they
extending
just
the
still be
side.
in a line? Because that, it only gets you a couple more cars.
Well, you could do two, what I'm suggesting is you do more than one line, more than
Oh.
one loop.
Oh, I see.
You could do
Okay.
almost, I want to say like a three-lane highway, because I don't want to get high-speed thoughts in people's heads. But if you do 2 to 3 loops there with a crosswalk, we could have it where the buses are dropping off. And remember, there's only 6 to 8 buses dropping off. And when they're gone, you would actually then, at that point, maybe even have three lanes that are going through. And if you use that side, that could extend that to get some of that traffic off of Preem.
Okay.
I know one of the elementary buildings in Brunswick, they're right off of Grafton, and it sounds like they do something very similar where you pull in and there's like 4 different lines and you have a number on your car and an employee walks down and is radioing the numbers back. And they have the kids in stations, and then once you pickup starts, then you start the circle around. So there probably are options.
In the case of something like that, because it does seem like there's going to be more of an organizational piece to this, do we need more staff? We don't currently pay anyone to do anything at SRAR at that time, if I understand correctly. So would that be something we have to add?
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking at that as a solution, we would potentially have to get someone, almost like a crosswalk, like they have at various points in the community. We would just have to contact the police and see if they'd be willing to do stuff like that for us. I haven't done that research yet, but that's definitely something I can look into. But yeah, we would more than likely have to have somebody there just to make sure that everybody's doing the new traffic pattern. Because that's always the issue, is when everything's new, people get very confused very easily. But if we have somebody out there to establish the pattern, I think we could be successful at it.
Do we have to hire someone? Is that what I'm hearing? You'd have to hire someone?
It depends. So we have, there's duty schedules that are in our teacher's contract. We do have a support staff that their duty is to help with dismissal. It's just determining the complexity of it. Do we need more than one person out there to help support? That's something we'd have to look at the staffing and talk with the principals about how they're utilizing people for the duties to see if we would need to add somebody or extend somebody's hours to make it work.
Thank you.
Do any of our,
Actually, it would be a good thing in the long run, because I've been at those schools and it's nuts when the kids get out. And I've always wondered like how we could do it different. And maybe this is going to end up being the different, but also like be more safe for the kids. I think, I don't know, because I've been at Sarrar, I've been at Chapman, and I've been at Kinsner. We were there the one day when they were all, and I don't know how kids are getting in and out of these buildings safely. It's very touch and go, We don't have a good flow pattern. We don't. And, I think if we had to do anything or spend money anywhere, that would be where I would want to see the money go to get these people in and out quicker. If we have to do this with the busing, that would be my goal in the end.
I would just wonder, we're having this discussion because we can't hire bus drivers. So are we going to have a similar issue hiring other
I think our best
staff?
bet would be the contract where they have additional duties. I'm pretty sure that's how the school in Brunswick does it. They have 2 adults out there. They also have crossing guards, like the older kids have the little yellow vests on, they're helping the younger kids. So it's an option.
Yeah. Yeah, there's options we can research.
Yeah.
There was a lot of data requests. So the data requests are linked in the agenda for the board. So the data sheet is there in the one document. And so just some of the questions that were asked, we'll go through it with you if you would like to, but it was asked about how many more cars are we going to have? Like Steve and I shared and we talked about, it's tough to tell because we don't know, are these kids already being brought in a car? But we just gave as a rough estimate, if you're on the data sheet and your example looking at column I, which is if we go to 1.25 miles, we would just say that number there, for example, the middle school is the example we used. If that's one kid and every kid gets dropped off and they weren't dropped off before, that's going to be 46 more cars. Divide it by 2, saying, hey, maybe they have 2 kids, or maybe not everybody, that's 23. So that's kind of the range that we used for that one. Number 2, Steve, if you want to share, the question was, the breakdown for high school was a little low, but let's take a look at it between 9th and 10th graders and the whole high school. So why don't you share what you found there?
Sure. So on the chart, I amended some of this. So grades 9 and 10, per our enrollment in February, eligible kids were 865. Right now, we have 191 freshmen, 187 sophomores. So of the 490 students that are transported at the high school, that's 378 are freshmen and sophomores. That's 77% of those 490 are sophomores and freshmen.
And then the last data piece that was asked for is to take a look at bus utilization. How full are the buses? So if you're looking at rows 14 through 33, that's where Steve did that analysis, and I'll let him explain it.
All right. So what I did is I went through and said, okay, here's how many kids are transported, here's how many routes we're running through, and I'm on the current section. The average was, after dividing the transported number by 44. So the reason why that's important is, so the buses will advertise that they're 72, but that's 3 to a seat. I don't know the last time you've been on a school bus, but heaven help you if you're on there with me, and we have to go 3 to a seat. And it's not a reflection on you, it's completely a reflection on me. So there are some cases, for example, some of the buses out of the apartments over at Whitney, some of those are packed where they're 3 to a seat. But I just took the average because statistically that's all I can do is look at averages. So I took everything out of 44, knowing full well we do have some buses that there's 2 high schoolers to a seat. Most of them, they're 1 to a seat. But again, I'm just using the averages. So using the averages, you can see the capacity that we're running at currently with 23 routes coming out of the high school. We're at 48% capacity, so we're at half. And you can see the trend going down through. What I would say to you is the high school comes with some of its own. The high school and middle school have the same logistical and geographical problems. So we could easily say, well, let's bump that number up to 100. Let's cut these routes down to, well, at that point it would be 12 or 13. However, because it's centrally located, we have to remember when you start cutting so many routes, you start extending the time that the kids are on the bus. So if we were to say, okay, everybody that's over in the Whitney, Sarar, Muraski area, let's pick them up with 3 buses. Well, a route that may have been 20 to 25 minutes is now 40 to 45 minutes, depending on traffic. So there's some of those logistical things that we need to look at as we look at capacity. The other thing I would say with the high school, as we talk about moving the range, I would also recommend that we look at changing our practice. Right now, what we do in practice is we say, okay, every high school kid, where are they located? They would ride this route. And then we assign them, blindly not knowing if they're going to ride or not, and then adjusting that back whenever the school year starts. So if you were to look at some of the route sheets for the drivers at the high school, they go from 128 kids to 40 kids. And then it keeps whittling from there as kids get older or get rides from somewhere else. What I'm proposing is last year we started advertising and putting out, if you're not using the transportation services, please let us know so we don't route you. My recommendation, with the numbers being what they are, even for the freshman and sophomore at the high school, which make up, again, 77% of our riders, is to advertise to our high school parents, if you are going to use our transportation, please let us know. And give them a deadline. Sometime in the summer to make that decision. Now, if we have people move in or people don't get the memo, it's not that we're not going to give you transportation. It just may take us a few days to get you routed as the school year starts. I think that would help us nail down exactly how many routes that we need at the high school to get that capacity to a better place, while also being sensitive to the fact of how long are the routes. And again, just for clarity, that's what I would do at the high school. I don't suggest that at the middle school because the ridership and the capacity being what it is, and it seems like the capacity numbers are taking care of themselves at the elementary, doing it the way that we do it right now. It's just the high school is the one that statistically is standing out to me. We may need to change our practice on routing those kids at the beginning of the year so we get a better capacity rate as we move through the school year. Any questions on that? So as we move forward, and I'm on lines 20, would you wish me to continue? Mm-hmm. Okay. As we go through lines 27 through 33, beside there, in those rows, there's all of the data, but I summarized it in where I put the capacity range. Again, I want to remind everyone what I did at the 1.25 and the 1.5 is I took the trend. So for example, because at the high school we have 28% of the eligible riders are using, I use that number to follow the trend of how many students, if we go to 1.25, how many heads are located. Okay, take 28% of those are how many are going to ride. But as we discussed the last meeting, that's a guess, because when you say who's at 1.25, all of them may ride, or we may stay at 28%. It may fluctuate to 40%, which is why I put the range in there. So what you're seeing is the low is if the trend continues with what we currently have. And you can see some of those numbers go up, some of those numbers go down because of the number of students that are located a mile and a quarter, or a mile and a half away. And then you do see the high range. That's if everybody that's eligible decides to ride. So those percentages will settle somewhere in the middle. I just can't tell you where, sitting here, and without going through, and it would take me much more time to go through and pick out every kid. Are they at 1.25? Do they ride right now? I can give you the range to say here's what we would be looking at as far as capacity. If so, for example, if you look at Sarar, and some of them get on the high side, some of them get pretty packed. Well, you can't carry at 116%. So what that would tell us is if we start noticing a trend that more and more of those kids that are eligible are riding, we may need to add a route back in. So one of those floaters, because if you'll recall, I'm not advocating getting any drivers reduced. That would just mean one of the floaters turns back into a regular route, because that's what the population has dictated. I did that for a mile and a quarter and a mile and a half. I gave you the low and the high range. The math is worked out on the side there. And of course, if you have questions about that, I'd be happy to answer. But I wanted to condense it for you so you had in one chart those numbers side by side.
Before we start discussing with the board your priorities, your concerns, any other questions on the data or the follow-up information you want us to share? So with that, Laura and I spoke about a process to go through. So what we'd like to do is to invite the board members. This is not the time where we're going to say, hey, I think we should do 1.0 or 1.25. But as you think about the ideas of either staying the same or expanding the zone of which we will not transport, what are your top priorities and top concerns as the board ponders this decision?
I've thought a lot about it, and one of my top concerns is if we have to make more of our drivers floaters, giving them more help with the routes. Like if they're going to show up in the morning and not know what route they're on, rather than handing them a stack of papers, I'd like to go back and talk about the iPads some more and making our routes more technology and making it easier for the drivers.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I mean, my main concern remains the traffic flow. Even with potential solutions, and I shared with Cameron the other day, if it's possible to trial any of these before next year, I'd sure like to do it before we add the additional cars and work out any kinks ahead of time. And then we'll know if this solution doesn't work, we have time to work on a new solution over the summer, as opposed to we start on August 15th and there's, Preem is a dead stop for 20 minutes. That's not going to make those neighbors very happy. So I'd rather try to problem solve and try the things, the ones that don't require construction now, if possible.
But I think,
How do we logistically do that? Because
Yeah.
we're telling, and maybe I don't understand what you're suggesting, but I think you're suggesting we tell parents in May or now, you're not getting a bus anymore.
No, just do it with what we have currently. I just want to see the traffic pattern. So like our current pickup right now at Sarrar is everybody parks on the grass, 4 deep, wherever you can find space. You must get out of your car, pick up your kids, walk back through the dodgems of the moving cars. I want to trial, park the staff on the other side, let's run the
Oh,
lines.
you want to trial the solutions?
Correct.
Okay.
but I think, doesn't that require you guys to do stuff though before, do you have to change anything? Like, I'm saying like this might not give them time to do what they need to do.
think
I understand
Sarrar
what you're
might be
saying.
the only one where we might be able to try it. Chapman, no, but
No,
Sarrar,
not
we
Chapman,
might be
no.
able to try.
We would just have to inform that they can't use that playground in the front for however long you wish to have
Yeah.
the trial.
Why wouldn't we be able to, what you're suggesting, the other locations, why wouldn't we be able to trial them?
Construction. Like
Just-
Chapman's requires new concrete.
Chapman's got to get they're going to go up, if I understood right, up into their front yard and loop that?
So
Is that what you were
at
saying?
Chapman, yeah.
Yeah.
They would go past the flagpole towards the main entrance.
Yeah, so
to
you
loop.
you
But none
can't
of the
really
work you're
practice.
suggesting is for the cars.
Yes, it's for the buses.
That would be the
Either way.
buses.
What I'm suggesting to do the loop at the front is for the buses to go there so they can vacate the larger loop and put the cars there.
Yeah.
Right now, I can't, it would be that'd be very difficult to have the buses go into the front lot and keep backing up and moving out. I just wouldn't suggest having the buses backing up like that at this point.
So one of your solutions is, because I thought you said all of the solutions would be in-house, but if we're doing concrete so that cars or buses can travel on them,
We do our own concrete in-house,
8 inches, all of that stuff.
yeah.
Okay.
We've always done that.
So that's not an insubstantial cost.
No, and that's why I'm bringing it up in theory right now. If it's something you wish for me to pursue, I can talk to Keith and get an actual number behind that to see what that cost is going to be. That's something that I can bring back if that's what you wish.
That would be the will of the board, but what I would be concerned about is a large capital expense to solve a body expense that we could solve with salary.
With those two locations, it's more than having bodies out there. There's a physical location change that needs to happen to make the traffic flow better than what it is currently. Because I would agree with you. I wouldn't, spend thousands when we can spend hundreds. But in this case, I don't see a way to change the traffic patterns at Sarrar without changing the parking locations. In order to do that, we have to relocate the kids.
Okay.
I think the one thing to consider too for Chapman is, which is different than Sarrar, is the length of the driveway. And we're taking a look at a change to 34 kids. So it's not a significant number of students. They've got a very long driveway. Would not be ideal, but it would be livable. If we come back and do the exercise and say, hey, this project is going to cost us X.
Yeah, we're trying to solve one problem, which obviously is a considerable problem, but if we're suddenly spending, concrete concrete paving isn't
Yeah.
a $100,000 project. It quickly gets to millions.
Well, and I will tell you, while it's, you know,
I would
fully
want to make sure we're
to be
real
fully
cognizant.
transparent, so Chapman's been an issue that I've been looking to solve. This is just ushering that in. Having parents backing up and pulling out the way, we're in my opinion, because I have 3 that go there, we're very fortunate we haven't had more accidents than what are there. So this is something that was on my radar as part of a critical needs project anyway. I'm just moving it forward to solve more than one problem that's existing now.
Okay.
I agree. It's not safe. I agree with you, it's not safe.
I wasn't talking because I learned if somebody agrees with you, then you don't have to say anything. Don't take my silence as anything other
I was
than
waiting for like, oh, okay,
inside.
thanks.
I'm agreeing with you loudly.
So based on the discussion so far, it seems like there's consensus in terms of the concerns. If we're adding more floaters, how is it not a sheet of paper? You know, how can we make it more efficient and effective and safer? Traffic flow concerns and cost of those. In terms of priorities, with the problem we're trying to solve, which is we are not able to provide the same level of service consistently as we have in the past, are there priorities related to that any board member wants to share?
What, I'm confused. What do we?
You say it a different way.
Sure. So besides the mileage piece of it, how much of a priority is it to solve the problems that we currently have, which is inconsistent busing, which is kids arriving home late, which is sometimes we have to cancel buses? Which of those are important to you that we solve because those solutions have
Well, I don't think we're
decisions.
thinking of the kids either. I mean, we are, but I'm saying like, they're sitting there sometimes a half an hour.
Right.
Those kids are tired, they're hungry, they're not allowed to have a snack. You know, it's almost cruel when they're little like that. The elementary, I'm saying. The older kids maybe can handle that a little bit better, but the younger kids, I just don't think it's right to keep them sitting in a building for a half an hour after a long day of school and not knowing when the bus is going to come.
So just in terms of the conversation we're having, the priority would be, we need to speed up
Right.
the manner in which we're picking up kids and get them out of the school quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I was reading an article, and I think 30 minutes is the most you're allowed to keep them. And we're pretty close to
We're
that.
pretty close, yeah.
And it's not right, and it's not fair to the kids. So we have to either their parents are going to have to find a way for them to get home, or we're going to have to try and change something, but something's got to give.
And if I remember correctly from when my kids were little, a very long time ago, like, they're not sitting in their classrooms, right? They're in,
No, they're in like a.
in Maraski, I think they were in the cafeteria.
Yeah, the gym,
hallway
the
or-
hallways,
Yeah.
Wherever they're at, they're really not allowed to do much of anything. I was shocked that they couldn't even like have a snack, because most kids would want to come home, you know, and get a snack.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's just my perspective, like, we're forgetting that piece of it.
Right.
Like, there are little kids sitting there. So, you know, we have to figure that out, too.
I think another priority is getting our supervisors off of the buses, putting them back in the offices, you know, the job that we hired them to do.
Any other things that haven't been mentioned that are important to the board that we make sure we solve with these decisions? So with that, and not hearing any more, are there any of that we've talked about that there needs to be further discussion on, or does the board have consensus on, what again, to reiterate, we need to equip our floaters with the tools to be successful. We need to address and figure out the cost and the feasibility of new traffic patterns. We need to make sure that we're getting the kids on the buses and home sooner at the elementary level. And we need to make sure our supervisors and office staff are doing the job they were hired to do instead of driving buses. Everybody good with those? So with that, if we want to take a look at that, and the potential options that are on the table are either to keep things the same and not change the mileage limits. And just as a reminder, as we talked about, we're going to have 4 retirements this year. We've averaged 2 to 3 drivers a year we've been able to utilize. And so we have to decide whether we keep it the same, reduce it to, or change it to 1.25 miles. We would only transport outside of that, or we'd only transport outside of 1.5 miles. So Steve, if you can share the data in terms of currently how many routes do we have, and then how many routes we would reduce at each of the levels to help give the board some additional context.
Sure. So going across the top, and I'm in lines 3 through 10, you can see what the reduction does at 1.25 and 1.5, and then I simplified it in a chart further down, lines 38 through 40. So if we go to 1.25, again, these are with the best information possible I'm giving you. You would reduce at least 1 at the high school, with the caveat that if we change the procedure, we could actually realize more. We would be cutting 2 at the middle school, and then across the elementaries, we could potentially cut 7. For at the 1.5, the high school drops down 3 from its current state, the middle school drops down 3 from its current state, and the elementaries, we're looking at a potential reduction of 10 routes across all those elementaries. Again, just to remind you, this has nothing to do with preschool. All of those students have transportation services provided to them through IEPs and those devices. So those are outside of this. I didn't include that in there.
Steve, if you can explain a little bit on, row 43 for 1.25 miles, you say that's a reduction of 10 routes, but if you look down and do the math on row 45, you're saying that's only a change in 4 drivers.
Correct, because remember, it's 10 routes, but there has to be 1 tier in each route to reduce a driving position. So what I did is I took the total number, and then for every 3 routes, we would potentially lose 1 driver position. I don't want to say lose 1 driver, because I don't need that to go out there in a soundbite. We would then use them as floaters, so that we don't lose any positions overall. But that's the general rule. It's a 3 for 1.
So to summarize, if we go from 1 mile to 1.25 miles, we would go from having 3 floaters available to 7. If we would go from 1.25 to 1.5, we would have 8.
Correct.
Can I ask a question about the floaters?
Sure.
Is there any risk that we're going to lose drivers because they don't want to become floaters?
I haven't seen that nor indicated that. I haven't had any of that feedback.
Have you asked the question?
Sure.
Have you asked the question
When
directly?
I presented to the drivers, I said we wouldn't lose any spots. We would convert you over to floaters. I did not receive any feedback that anybody was upset about that. They were happy that we weren't losing floaters. And keep in mind, as I said, they would be contracted as floaters, and that comes with a certain contract. But if we start seeing an uptick in students coming in, that would be our well, so to speak, to add another route, and then we could bid that out. So we don't have to, be hurting for drivers. And again, to repeat what I said the last meeting, is any statistical difference of significance in an uptick in student ridership is going to be devastating to our current transportation department. We just can't handle it. I know we're talking about the capacity, but we just can't keep adding kids with our current staff and think that things are going to get better. That's why I was encouraged when I did the numbers and saw the capacity that there may be some cases where it was a little bit lower on the capacity. That just gives us more space as a cushion if the ridership starts to go up again in the
So
uptick.
I think an important point to look at about will our drivers be open to being floaters is the way we assign routes is through a bid process. And so the drivers, based on seniority, pick their routes from most senior to least senior. So people that have more seniority would not be forced to take these routes if they didn't want them, but we have had people that take them. So in theory, the people that want them will have choices to say, hey, I like and we've had drivers that I've been with that have said, I like the newness of every day and getting to know all the routes and being able to do that, where some people will say, like, that's not my thing. And so some of the floaters would be our least senior employees that may be there based on the routing process.
I think when we had the ESSER funds, we had 3 router positions.
Yeah, we've had them for a while now, yeah. We had 3, this would just expand it.
Yeah.
I have another question about the data. Help me understand, at 1.25, the highest number of routes during that tier would be at the middle school at 36. Am I reading that right? The most number, right? 22 for the high school, 36 for middle school, 32 for the elementary. Why is it then that we need 43 drivers when the most number of routes running at once is 36? Is that special education buses? Is that the difference?
Yeah. Because I'm not including special ed buses anywhere in those numbers.
So-
You're talking about special education buses that go to the preschool, they go to Chapman right now, and they go to Sarar. Those are not included in those.
But are they in tiers? Like, so the way I read this, if there's 36 buses, 36 routes at the middle school, and that's the most, that would assume that there are 7 special education buses running during the middle school route time.
So I understand your
Is that
question.
is that the
Special, I
case?
don't believe special education is built into these, is it, Steve?
No.
It's not,
No.
but how are we getting the discrepancy in numbers then?
Right, so if we're taking a look at, I understand what Michelle is saying. We have 36 routes at the middle school. Why would not be the maximum drivers needed be 36?
Oh, yeah, drivers need.
Could it be summer still running the high school routes?
They shouldn't be. Those don't overlap.
I don't think parochials are in here either.
Well, I know we're running, I don't know how many special ed, I believe at least 4 special ed buses are going to the
At the
middle school.
Yeah.
So
So it still
that can
leaves
make up
3
some of the
unaccounted
difference.
for. So can you help me find the 3? Not necessarily
Yeah.
today, but at some point?
Yeah.
So with all of that, Ms. Hausum, I'll turn it back over to you to, again, the board would give guidance to the policy committee for what we want to have in the policy, whether we want to stay the same, move to 1.25, or move to 1.5.
Thanks, Dr. Ryba. Who wants to start?
I just have a question. If the reason we are considering 1 mile is by law, correct? 1 mileage limit. We cannot, we are prohibited by law, by state law, to say the high school's 2 miles.
What you do for one, you have to do for all.
Right, that's by state law. So if that weren't the law, would you have a different recommendation?
If I could make it where it's 2 miles so just to clarify,
I
2
mean,
miles
that-
for
the
the high
question would
school,
be-
1.5 miles for middle school, 1 mile just off the top of my head.
Or just 2 miles at the high school and 1 mile at the other levels?
I mean, the recommendation would be to go to those levels, yes.
Say that
Because
again?
The recommendation, yes, would be we need to do something other than what we're doing right now. That we would need to change to those, if the law allowed us to, yes. I just feel the problem is going to, so at the danger of sounding too blunt, if we don't make the decision is going to be made for us as we keep losing drivers to retirement and not have any drivers coming in. So so the answer is yes. Regardless, if we were able to do some different manipulations from the state, we can't keep doing our current level of service to the community with the resources available. If I could play with those numbers, I would. Maybe
I mean, again, not to put too fine of it, but just looking at it, I just looked at it and said, you know, the high school, that's where you have the most capacity to find your own transportation, right?
Correct.
And if we look at the utilization numbers, you know, once you're a junior or a senior, you want to drive to school, right? But I don't want to assume that actually helps anything without asking the question.
And while it would help us with the operational, costs and everything at the high school itself, it doesn't help the overall issue of the middle school would still be at the capacity it's at, the elementary would still be at the capacity that they're at, because they are separate tiers. It's all part of a whole, but in some cases, they work autonomously within relation to one another.
I think that's a very important point that Steve just said. So, just to reiterate it, reducing one tier does not help us out because that driver's now free at the high school, but we don't need them at the high school, we need them at the elementary school.
Right, right.
That's where we are the
Yeah.
most.
So it's one of those, we
I
need
just
to
know
fi-
that
we
because
need to-
Steve has corrected me
We need
in
to
the
fix
past.
it.
That's
We
only
need to
because I've been
address our
corrected
worst.
many times.
We need to address our worst-case situation.
Which is
Yeah.
why I picked the middle school number.
Right.
Right, it's the highest one, that's the one we have to pay attention to. The
Right.
rest of them will fall where they may.
Correct.
I mean, I personally, I know we need to do something. We can't keep going on the way we are. Like you said, we're going to lose more drivers, and we don't have the drivers knocking down our door. I
But
just want
to
the
be clear,
commu-
the negative consequence of not having the drivers is they're late, what are they?
So stepping out of my lane into an emotional state, it causes more consternation, difficulties for parents because of all the instances that we've had, and those are going to be elevated. Late buses, kids getting picked up later, returning later, sometimes not even being able to transport that day, depending on how many drivers are available because of absences and all those reasons we talked about before. So you have that side of the line. From the business side of the line, you start looking at a cut in funding for the reasons that Mrs. Kilbane said. If we consistently, so you can theoretically, well, not theoretically, you can legally leave a student more than half an hour. But if that starts to become the norm and not the exception, there are some very swift and sudden funding changes that we would have to address out of the transportation department. And if you've read the paper, you see some of the larger districts having to deal with that very swift and sure action from the state to come in and say, you've been more than half an hour for this many days, it's been consistent, you now lose X amount of funding. And I do know this about funding, once you lose it, it is very difficult to prove why you need it again. So I would rather avoid having that happen to us, because we just cannot provide what's needed in the confines of the law. And that's honestly what, if this starts to get worse, that's the consequences on the business side of the line.
And I wonder too about, like, is there added stress on our drivers, which then, stress on a driver is never a good thing. And so I'm considering it from the driver perspective as well, because they're taxed, beyond the max. A lot of them are working, they're driving extra additional routes on top of the 7 they already drive in a day.
Correct,
That, at some point, that becomes dangerous.
And you think about that student who has sat in school all day and then went and sat in the media center or the hallway or whatever for another half hour. By the time they get on that bus, it's not their fault, but they've got some, energy to burn off, I'm sure.
Unless their last name is Breckner, and that's completely their fault.
That does not happen.
Just want that on record.
They're sitting 3 in the seat.
You will sit, you will behave.
So, okay, so we are back to, I'm sorry, Dr. Rival, we were,
No, so we are going to look at, what we've talked about in terms of where we need to seek consensus now is keep it the same, move to 1.25, or move to 1.5.
right. And again, like I said, I know we need to do something. I want to make sure that the community understands that this is not penalizing them in any way.
Sure.
Like, we are not cutting drivers, we're not saving money by doing this. We might be spending some money to do this, but something's got to give.
Well, we can always go back if we get drivers, you know? I mean, it might not stay like this forever.
Correct.
And it's not like we're
Hopefully.
not going to continue to advertise for new drivers.
Right. I mean, we're going to keep moving, hopefully, ahead. But right now, I don't think that we have a choice.
Right? I mean,
And I
because at
know
the
it's like a
bottom,
hard decision. I would like to do the least of the mileage to start, and then see if it frees up. I mean, that's my opinion, see how it like if it's 1.25, then see how that goes.
and Sharon, I think I agree with you, because I was looking at how many routes are getting cut between the 1.25 and the 1.5. So when you look at that, it's, we're cutting 10 at 1.25, and then we jump to 16 at 1.5. I'm like, well, maybe we should do the 1.5, but then you're still hiring 4 new people at both of those.
I looked at that too.
Right.
So we're still needing 4.
Right.
So we're not changing anything.
So if we start at the 1.25. Any other thoughts?
I mean, I agree with you in the same. I mean, if I'm looking at this, drivers needed, assuming we find the 3 drivers. From 1.25, we need 43, 1.5, we need 42. To me, that's not enough of a change to support going to the 1.5. So, but we have to do something. I just don't see how we don't do anything. And the solutions that we're proposing in order to manage the traffic solve other problems as well, which we could solve those on their own, but this is going to address several things at once. I'm kind of looking at it as we're going to serve a few fewer students, and that may be problematic for those parents. It may be. And I'm not discounting that. But for the majority of our students are going to have an overall better, more timely, appropriate experience. I feel like that is what we're weighing right now, and safer. I feel like at the end of the day, that's the trade-off. And I think I think we need to make it at the 1.25.
Rich?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I look at it as, I will ask it just so that we've asked it. I mean, the solution that would solve our staffing problem and not adjust our service commitment is to hire more drivers. It is really easy to say that. We're failing at it. And we're not failing at it because we're not offering enough money. We're not failing at it because something that we could control. We're failing at it because the employees are not presenting themselves. They're not coming to the job, right? That's the solution that if we had a preference, that's the solution we want. We've done reasonable things to try to address it that way, and we're failing. So if we continue to ignore it, the consequence is service failures. And so we're just making the decision that we want to maintain a level of service for as many people as possible, and acknowledging that means that whatever families are in mile 1 to 1.25, they're getting a reduction in the service that they have grown accustomed to. There's no way for us to figure out whether that's a big deal or a small deal. It would be cavalier to say it's going to be a small deal for everyone. It's going to be a smaller deal for some families, a bigger deal for other families. But I think we need to do something and acknowledge that, as Sharon mentioned, we can reapproach it in a year.
Right.
We're going to reapproach it at some point if the trend doesn't change. Assuming retirements continue and we're not backfilling them at an equal or greater level, this conversation is going to occur again. So I think doing it piecemeal and doing it as small as possible resonates. I would support that. I don't like to cavalierly say it, but I think you got to try it. And as Steve mentioned, you can't exactly figure it out until you say this is the new standard and what is that going to play out. The only other thing I thought about is I would look for consensus from the board. The suggestions of what you want to do at the high school, those just make sense. I don't think we need to wait for that discussion or those decisions.
You're talking about the opt-in to busing rather than opting out?
All of that,
Yeah, I
and
like
being
that.
able to maximize routes, right? It would be very frustrating if I'm the parent that's losing because I'm at 1.15 and I see a high school bus driving by with 5 kids on it. So whatever we need to do to make the high school more efficient, I wouldn't wait on that.
Okay, thank you.
If there's the consensus of the board.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I agree. Haley, did you have anything you wanted to
I
add?
think it's important to note that every community is having the same problem. Every community is looking for bus drivers, so it's not a Strongsville community issue. It's a all-around issue, and looking at what other cities are doing and what mileage they provide, and that we are above what others are doing too. And I hate it. I don't want to do it, but
Out of curiosity, if 10 bus drivers show up tomorrow, we don't have to make this decision?
And apply, new bus drivers, right?
And pass the test. all right.
I mean, yes, to your point, a variable has to change.
The
Traditionally and up
message has
till now.
been released, 10.
All right, so just to recap, the consensus we have is 1.25 miles. That will go to the policy committee to work on being as efficient and maximize our busing at the high school as much as possible. Go forward with the you must opt in to receive transportation option. And then as Steve shared at the beginning, we will continue to pick up kids where there's a safety concern or without sidewalks as is current practice. And that will expand from 1 mile to 1.25 within that mileage. Are you good?
The only other piece would be minimizing the home stops that are not for safety reasons.
Oh, yes, thank you.
That are on sidewalk streets, but, yeah, we've had those issues, and I would recommend that it may cause some phone calls and things like that, but we need to be consistent with, we're gonna be at the corners to pick up kids so that we can make the routes as efficient as possible. Every additional route is about 3 minutes. I would rather use those 3 minutes to pick up the most kids possible and get them to the school building than be inefficient.
Is everybody okay with that?
I actually followed a bus the other day doing those home stops, and I wondered, why are we doing this? Because they could have walked 3 houses on the sidewalk, right? So, yes, that's a yes for me.
But again, the houses on Drake that don't have a sidewalk, we will pick
Correct.
them up
I'm not
at
talking
their
about home
driveway.
stops on those. I'm talking about home stops that are,
Yeah.
to your point.
We
you
do
know,
home stops, like, if there's sidewalks and stuff?
There's
We
been
do?
some cases where we have.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
we're not even stopping anymore. Kids are just going to jump on the bus.
They're gonna
Duck and
change the
roll.
plans.
Let's get on.
They're gonna chase the bus.
Yeah.
I'm good. I think Steve, you good?
I'm good. Thank you very much for the direction.
Appreciate the board's direction on this as well. And so Steve's going to continue on. He's got a couple other items on going back to the agenda for your consideration.
So the next item is getting your permission to go to the Ohio Schools Council to participate in their spring bus bid program. We did participate in the fall bid purchasing program. However, with conversations I had with the mechanics, we felt that going forward and purchasing 2 buses, one of the shorter buses and one of the longer buses, we wanted to see what we were going to be able to do as far as some of the new standards from the inspectors and things like that. And due to our mechanics' hard work, we're at a better spot with the 72 passenger buses than we anticipated. So I'm not purchasing those 2 buses, but the one that's apparent that we still need to go out and get a bid and be protected through the process of bidding is the shorter bus that has the lift for the special needs students. So This is basically replacing the fall bid. We're not purchasing 3 buses this year, for those keeping track. We're just going to go forward and purchase the one, go competitive bid, see what the prices are for the buses with the lift.
This is an action item, so I need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Ms. Cobain. Any other questions for Steve on this? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is the roof replacement at both, replacement and renovation at Whitney and Chapman Elementary Schools. This will be from the 070 Capital Projects Fund. As you can see there, the total cost of this in the exhibits will not exceed $2,447,000. And this is through a preferred partner through our OSC membership.
Another action item, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Ms. Cobain. Questions, comments for Steve? We're replacing the entire roofs. Do you want to?
So we're replacing, we're renovating some that can be saved, but we are replacing parts of the other. That's in the exhibit. We've put it off for honestly longer than we've been putting Band-Aids on these roofs for a long time, and the Band-Aid approach is starting to fail. We're seeing a significant uptick in the amount of work that's needing to be done on these roofs that's outside of warranty or outside of service agreement, which is a direct charge that's coming to us. The roofs are leaking, they're causing issues. These are the 2 worst ones that we have in the district. They also, they're not having any other work done at the buildings this year, so this is the perfect time to do that. So it's not only the necessity of how bad the roofs are, but the timing of the fact that this is a good time to have these roofs done as well. This is something we've been talking about in facilities development for at least a year, going through and talking about it, looking at the resources available to do it. It's honestly, it's time to address the leaky roofs in the district.
So Steve, I'll just correct you on one statement. The Facilities Development Committee has been considering roofs for much more than 1 year. We have been considering the specific details of this for a little over a year. But we have, to your credit, we talk about roofs at least once a year, systemically throughout for the entire district with the Facilities Development Committee. That's their charge, and you do a nice job of making sure to keep all of that in a spreadsheet so that we can make sure we're aware of all of the capital improvement needs we have as a district. I'm supportive of the decision. The other thing I wanted to make sure that we don't have an unintended message. When we say we've been Band-Aiding them, et cetera, for too long, part of that has always been because of our goal for new elementary schools.
Correct.
And the Facilities Development Committee, along with the board and everyone else here, has always tried to balance that frustration or that what's the wise thing to do. Do we put $2 million $2.5 million into roofs on a facility that we intend to replace? Is that the wisest use of taxpayer dollars? But we've had those conversations before. We'll continue to have those conversations. But we're at a point now where the pendulum has swung the other way, and to continue to do repairs, there's no more modest repairs. Mm-hmm. I like the car analogies. You can do the minor things to your engine, but at a certain point, it becomes unsafe. And it's now time to do these roofs. I'm assuming there's a lot of heartburn out there of, my gosh, $2.5 million for roofs for buildings that we're hoping to replace. But it is the Hobson's choice we have to make.
Right, the time has come.
The time has come, and the only other thing I would, and I'll be quick, it's these kinds of decisions that the biennium budget discussion run in parallel, and you don't necessarily think they do. But we're paying for this out of the 070 fund because of because of the stewardship that this board and this administration has with the taxpayers' dollars. If that 30% rule comes into play, all of these decisions will suddenly become impossible without going back to the taxpayer for additional taxes. And so on the one hand, it sounds good to say we need to provide relief to the taxpayer and the taxes they're spending. But it is it's a fool's errand to provide relief and then have to come back and say, oops, we need that money. And instead of planning for it, we're just going to do it every year. And it feels like, we're being told to, spend whatever money we have and not worry about tomorrow. That's enough for me.
Any other questions, comments for Steve? All right, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
motion carries.
All right. Sorry, that's my first multi-million-dollar purchase, so I'm just soaking that one in. I do appreciate your support in that. The last item in this section is for the restoration of the preschool parking lot. Again, this is going to come from the 070 Capital Projects Fund. This project will not exceed the cost of $123,225. And the company that we're going to be using, Always Construction, is a preferred partner in the Ohio Schools Council, and it's consortium pricing through them.
Another action item, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Ms. Cobain. Questions, comments?
Busy night, Steve.
I know, you are very busy. So we had talked before about the fact that we could do concrete in-house. Why can't we do this in-house?
This is asphalt, and we're doing full depth repair.
Gotcha.
While I know Keith would love to get in there, the equipment that we would have to borrow and just the scope of the work that needs to be done, we could use their talents otherwhere in the district for that. It's just, it's too big of a project. And just in the same vein as before, this is something that we've put off as long as possible due to some of the plans that we had talked about with the new elementaries and potential changes in the district of the location of the preschool. However, the parking lot is way past the point of any kind of repair. To its foundation and to its base, it's not stable for the asphalt any longer. So we're going to have to go down and reinforce that base and build it back up so that we're not wasting the resources that we have on a fix that we know is going to fail in a very short amount of time. This is all part of the rotation of taking care of our parking lots in the district as well. This one's just been put off a year or two, but we can't keep putting it off any longer.
Why can't we just fill the chuck holes, put the tar on it?
Because as soon as the snow hits and the plow hits it, those chuck holes are going to be 1.5 bigger than what they were.
It was a leading question,
Yeah.
but again,
If anybody's been on Route 8 out of Cuyahoga Falls, you can replace the chuck holes. It's just going to take a hubcap later.
I feel like Pearl Road is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the city has more challenges with chuck holes than we do, but the pain is the same.
Any other questions, comments? George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Ms. Hausum?
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell?
motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Steve. We have nothing under curriculum tonight. We do have one item under student services. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the Board of Education enters into an agreement with Insight Behavioral Consulting, an Insight Academy for placement of a student who requires special education-related services for the 24-25 school year. Prorated amount is $18,746 with an additional $5,000 if the student attends an extended school year. Next, under Human Resources, we do have one resignation of a leadership staff member for your consideration. And with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type-action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Does anyone have any items they need removed? Hearing none. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is Board of Education Other. Item number 1 is discussion about the future levy and bond issue.
So one of the things that we put together, obviously, last time we had this discussion, the board gave the direction that we're looking at May 2026 to have operating levy and potential bond issue on the ballot. And so linked in your agenda, and George, if you can click on the board prioritize plan tab. Just as a reminder to level set, for a year leading up to the fall of 2023, we had an elementary facilities planning committee. It was representative of staff, community members, and parents, answering the question, what are the future facility needs or we want to have in our district, specifically for our aging elementary buildings. The recommended plan was called the yellow plan. There was a variety of colors that demonstrated 2 buildings, 3 buildings, 4 buildings, 5. So the yellow plan was what was recommended, and in the fall of 2023, the board voted to approve that plan. And so what that plan entails is 3 new elementary schools, 1 to be at the former Albion site, 1 to be at the Chapman property, and 1 to be at the Sarrar property, renovating Kinsner Elementary School, renovating Muraski to be an administrative office building and a preschool, and abating and demoing the buildings that are listed there. So what you see in the November 2023 cost column is just that. That's the cost that the board was considering for a bond issue at that time. We worked with our partners from GPD, and obviously there's a lot of unknowns right now with increase of cost, tariffs, a variety of things going on. But they projected if the board moves forward with this in May of 2026, that $37.4 million in fall of 23 would now cost $45.5 million in May of 26 because of inflation and all the increase of cost that's there. The one that you see, if you take a look at row 5, which is Kinsner, the reason that price has been reduced is the board has approved the new HVAC project, and so they have taken that out of the scope of work for Kinsner, so that's why there's a decrease. If we move down to the blue section where it says other needs, part of the committee, the Elementary Facilities Planning Committee, is they looked at a variety of other things that the district may need, understanding that this probably would be the last bond project in many years for the district based on the other bond project we had. And they took a look holistically at what those needs would be. And then these are the ones that were recommended by the Facilities Planning Committee. And if you look at the right column, the reason those cells are highlighted in orange or red is because when the board approved the plan in the fall, they did not include those in the plan. So you only included the ones that say must do tier 1. So for the other needs, you approved upgrades to the high school performing arts, building an athletic field house, and turfing the baseball and softball fields. All of the other things you deemed as something we should do at a later time. Just as an apples and apples comparison, all told, the project has increased in this time period about $30 million. The reason the $20 million is highlighted is obviously we're spending out of the 070 account, so that $20 million would most likely be different or to be determined how it would be used. So with that, Ms. Hausum, I'll turn it back over to you to have a discussion in terms of how the board would like to move forward in May 2026 with regard to bond issue.
Thank you, Dr. Raba. Before we start, George, I have a silly question maybe.
Sure.
Since I've never experienced a bond and a levy at the same time, are they voted on the ballot together, or are they separate? Are they two separate ballot issues?
Depends on how we
Okay.
do it.
Got you.
We could-
Okay. So that's
I
part
think
of
we
the
have the option
discussion.
to do both. Either one, I should say,
Okay.
either way.
All right, thank you. Okay, that was just my curiosity question, so who would like to start?
We talked about
I will-
that today. At the
Oh.
PTA, yeah.
George has something else.
I will add, I just got these filing dates while I was in Columbus yesterday. The May election is May 5th, 2026, and for this to be a construction project, the first filing date is 120th day before the election, which is January 5th. So just kind of working backwards, that's when we would have to pass the resolution, or that's when we would have to file the first resolution, so prior to that date. And given an organizational meeting, so it'd probably be best to do it sometime in December
Yeah,
for Resolution 1.
okay. All right, thanks, George. All right, who would like to start the discussion? I've thought about it, how to move forward, and something that keeps coming to my mind is that, it's been over a year and a half since we've met with that larger committee that approved this plan. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to go back and review it with them again.
They're willing. I mean, if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder because the numbers have changed, and to assume that they are going to make entirely the same recommendation when we're talking about $30 million more, I don't think it's fair to make that assumption.
And the community has obviously let us know that they'd like input. So I feel like that's a good group representation from our community, and we invite everyone from the community to be on that committee.
I mean, I think it's reasonable to have an update meeting with them, and the sooner the better. At the end of the day, not to rehash spilled milk, but this plan was a community-driven plan. I thought we had a great process. I thought we had a process that allowed anybody who wanted to be involved. And like anything, any purchasing decision, you have, people who want this, who want that. But it came to consensus, and I think it was a good, reasonable plan. It addressed our elementary school needs, which we have been talking about as a district since before the middle school, high school renovation. The elementary school, providing for our elementary school infrastructure has been part of that long plan. In fact, the money from the Ohio Schools, OFCC, Ohio Facility, help me, George. Construction Commission? That sounds good enough.
Committee, commission.
We have a credit if and when, well, let's just say when, it ain't gonna be if. Too many people worked really hard for that credit. We will eventually get that credit. But part of that credit was, hey, we're gonna look at elementary schools and see how we can apply that credit to the taxpayers' benefit. So I think it behooves us to revisit it, to discuss the numbers. It should give everyone pause that it's, $25, $30 million, plus we no longer have the 070 fund tool that we wanted to. But we paused that conversation to talk about our paycheck issues, to talk about that levy. We all know how that conversation went. So I think it's reasonable to start by bringing that team together. Obviously, that team isn't going to be exactly the same, so it's an opportunity for new people to come in and start that communication campaign of this is the project, and these are the updated numbers, and here's what that means. But, you know, as one board member, we do still need to address our operating costs. So I think it makes sense that we have that discussion as a board at the same time. I don't think we no longer have the ability to have separate sequential conversations. You know, we can talk about the mechanics of, you know, one vote, separate votes, things like that. But I do think we need to address those for the May 2026 ballot. And I think having an update with the committee and any new members would be a great first step.
I think it would be important for all 5 of us to be there. Are we able to call a special meeting?
You could call a special board meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you can? So we can all be there then?
It would be a board meeting similar. It would be a
Oh.
board meeting, and then you'd be conducting business with, as
Right.
part of the committee.
Okay.
So we could do it as just a board meeting, but we wouldn't have to necessarily run it. She could open it and turn it over to facilities and so forth, correct?
We would have to do the open.
Right, she would do the
The open.
opening,
Be
And
very
it would be
similar
like
to
a
a work
discussion.
session.
Right.
except
And-
that would be the work.
That would be the.
So we would be set up similar to a board meeting at our spots, and then,
We'd have to stop
Second.
Cameron and George from adjusting the agenda.
That was just my thought. I thought it was important that.
Well, if we make it a board meeting, it allows all of us to participate.
Right.
And it allows all of us to ask questions and participate in the dialogue. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
So as we plan and get the group back together, I'll confer with the board on dates, and as Rich said, get this going as soon as possible. And then, Laura, if you and I can work together on building the agenda and going from there, does that work?
That sounds good.
Okay.
This is just a thought, but it'll be extra work. I'm thinking probably do it in the summer, like, and maybe have 2 options for people to get as many, you know, because you want to get as many people as you can. I mean, it would be more for us, like, we'd have to be here, but I prefer getting as many people involved in this as we can. So that's just a side note.
Sharon, here's a thought based on that is, so we have, this is something for the board to consider. So we have an elementary facilities planning committee that has defined membership. And so honoring the work that they did to bring that group back, but you always have the option of kind of having an open town hall or a public meeting like that. So if you want to do something that it's going to get as many people involved and have as many voices heard, that's something for you guys to consider. But I would suggest that they be 2 separate meetings to honor the group that came up with the plan first and have them
Right.
give input.
And
Just a
is-
thought.
Just the mechanics of it, I think we do the board meeting with the original members. And then, you know, it's not like we can only have one meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not like a project of this scope is only going to be done with one meeting. So I like the idea of doing the board meeting as a work session with the original elementary facilities development committee, whatever we called them, to update the numbers, et cetera. But then we should have, I think town hall is a nice way to describe it, that is open up more to the community, because I think enough time has passed, maybe not just board members, but everybody has kind of forgotten what the plan is. So
Right.
those town halls would be an opportunity to revisit that.
Yep, great idea.
And the follow-up too, and I really don't want to wait. If we can do it sooner than the summer, I really would like to. My biggest fear with this campaign is waiting too long and getting behind on the game right from the get-go, and that starts with us. And so I really don't want to put a committee in a bind by elongating our decision-making process.
Agreed.
I agree.
You and I can work together on dates and
Yep.
getting everything going.
Sounds good. Any other thoughts or questions?
I think we really have to wait until we you know, we see it all in front of us, but we can keep going over it, but it's not gonna make, you know, a difference right now, I don't think.
Right.
Till we get other people involved.
All right.
Good.
Good. Next, miscellaneous. Does anyone have any miscellaneous for Board of Education? Hearing none, we will be returning to executive session to,
Consider the employment of a public employee and to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing.
I have some, I do have a Board of Education other that I'm going to slide into the discussion. The high school has a science night.
Yes, they
On-
do.
Oh, yes, they just.
When's our next board meeting? April 21st from 6 to 8. April 24th. And it's terrible that it's on the same night as our board meeting. That was my only comment.
Is it on the same night as that? Oh, it is?
I was so excited to see it, and then I put it in my calendar and was sad and cried.
Well, we could make an adjustment to the 6:15 start. That would at least give us an hour.
We're good.
I mean, I have kids at it too.
Is it at,
Rich
it's at
doesn't
the
have
high
kids
school,
on it.
right?
I just like science fairs.
You
Okay.
can move the meeting to the 23rd if you want.
Sorry, Rich.
George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yeah.
We will enter into executive session approximately 9:10 PM. We don't foresee any reason to come back into public session, so everyone have a great night.
I'm just gonna have these.